General Hospital spoilers tease that Maxie's world had already been rocked by the chaos surrounding Natalia's death. But nothing could have prepared her for the shocking discovery buried deep within the financial records of Deception Cosmetics. What began as a quiet investigation into unusual discrepancies quickly spiraled into a revelation so disturbing, so unthinkable, that it left Maxie reeling. Hidden beneath layers of forged reports, offshore accounts, and encrypted correspondence was the undeniable truth. Natalia hadn't just made a mistake, she had executed a masterstroke of manipulation and betrayal that spanned months, maybe even years. Before her death, Natalia had wired a massive sum of money to a foreign account routed through 3 countries and protected by shell corporations that no legitimate investor would dare touch. It was a calculated move. Not the panicked action of someone cornered, but the final step in a grand scheme designed to vanish with a fortune. The implications were staggering. Natalia's investment pitch to Sonny had not been born out of desperation to save Deception. It was a facade, a trap. She had crafted the illusion of a struggling company in need of Sonny's help, exploiting his reputation and trust to cover the real objective, laundering stolen funds through a public-facing business with deep ties to the Corinthos name. By getting Sonny to make a second investment, well-documented and pushed through at a time of public scrutiny, Natalia had provided herself with a perfect smokescreen. The funds would appear legitimate, the movement of cash explainable, and any future investigation would hit a dead end if they failed to question the intent behind the transaction. Maxie couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. Natalia had left behind a trail of falsified expense reports, ghost vendor contracts, and forged digital signatures that all led back to the moment of Sonny's investment. It wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping, it was intentional deceit. Even more troubling, Maxie realized that this deception was not solely financial. It was psychological warfare. Natalia had cultivated relationships within the company, gained the trust of people like Brooke Lynn and Maxie herself, all while laying the groundwork for a betrayal that would leave reputations ruined and livelihoods destroyed. If the full extent of the embezzlement became public and Sonny was accused, the fallout would be catastrophic, not just for him, but for Deception, for the Quartermaines, for the legacy of every person attached to the brand. And still, that wasn't the most terrifying part. Maxie's gut told her that Natalia hadn't worked alone. Someone else had helped facilitate the offshore transfers. Someone had tampered with the accounting software. Someone had made sure that the flash drive Natalia mentioned to Sonny was never recovered. That missing drive wasn't just a red herring, it could contain the names of co-conspirators, backup plans, fail-safes, or even a final act of insurance in case Natalia's plan went awry. Its absence wasn't random. It was intentional. And that meant someone in Port Charles was still playing a dangerous game. The more Maxie dug, the clearer the picture became. Natalia had used her charm, her business acumen, and the illusion of loyalty to plant herself at the heart of Deception and twist its future into something dark and unrecognizable. But why Sonny? Why frame someone with such notoriety? Someone with enough enemies that the accusation would be believable? The answer, Maxie feared, was chillingly simple, because it would work. Sonny's past made him an easy target. All Natalia needed was the suggestion of guilt and the public would fill in the rest. It wasn't just about stealing money. It was about destroying a man's legacy. Maxie knew she had to act fast. The financials were already unstable, and whispers about Deception's solvency had begun to circulate. If the truth came out the wrong way, if someone leaked part of the story before Maxie could uncover the rest, the entire company would collapse under the weight of suspicion. And if Sonny's name were dragged into the mess, it would trigger a media firestorm that no one could contain, not even Laura, not even the Quartermaines. Determined to protect what was left of Deception and to shield Sonny from becoming the scapegoat of a dead woman's betrayal, Maxie reached out to Spinelli. His unique talents would be critical in tracking down the digital fingerprints Natalia had tried so hard to erase. Together, they would comb through metadata, locate server pings, and piece together the hidden framework of Natalia's grand illusion. There was a story buried in the numbers, and Maxie was going to find it. But time was running out. The election loomed. The court battles for custody were intensifying. Sonny couldn't afford another scandal, not when he was already under suspicion for the Metro Court fire. Not when Ezra and Drew were working behind the scenes to destabilize everything he'd built. Maxie's discovery had opened a door into something far more dangerous than a financial scandal. It was a political trap, a personal vendetta, and a potential downfall rolled into one. She knew that if she didn't expose the truth soon, Natalia's final act of betrayal wouldn't just destroy deception. It would destroy poor Charles. Because in the shadows, someone was waiting to strike next, someone who knew what Natalia had started and was prepared to finish it. And unless Maxie could get ahead of the lies, the next name in the headlines wouldn't be Natalia. It would be Sonny. Or worse, it would be Maxie herself. The revelations unfolding in Port Charles have taken a deeply disturbing turn. As Maxie uncovers a hidden truth that redefines the narrative surrounding Natalia's death and the firestorm of suspicion consuming Sonny. 4 weeks. All eyes had been on Sonny as the presumed architect of deception, accused of foul play tied to shady investments and financial misdeeds surrounding Deception Cosmetics. But now, in a shocking twist, Maxie has pieced together a narrative far more sinister, one that paints Sonny not as the villain, but as the true victim of a calculated and ruthless conspiracy orchestrated by Sidwell and Natalia. It began with whispers, Maxie's intuition nagging at her when the pieces didn't align. Natalia had been playing a dangerous game, and her sudden demise had conveniently shifted scrutiny onto Sonny at the very moment when her fraudulent dealings were nearing exposure. As Maxie dug deeper into Deception's financial records, with Spinelli's forensic skills unearthing hidden ledgers and erased metadata, it became painfully clear that Natalia's entire relationship with Sonny had been part of a greater ploy, an entrapment scheme designed by Sidwell, executed by Natalia, and now teetering on the brink of exposure. The offshore accounts, the staged investment disaster, the fabricated numbers, all of it pointed not to a desperate investor, but to a woman playing her final card in a long-standing alliance with a man known for pulling strings from the shadows. Maxie's investigation uncovered a trail of communication between Natalia and Sidwell, encrypted but not impossible to decrypt. The emails were damning. They spoke of leverage, manipulation, and most chillingly, of what to do if Sonny became a problem. They planned to frame him. They planned to silence questions with noise. And in the event of Natalia's death, Sidwell had laid the groundwork to make Sonny look like the only possible suspect. But the final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a security recording, an overlooked file stored on a server linked to the old Deception offices. On that footage, Natalia could be seen arguing with someone just hours before her death. The footage was grainy, and the voice was distorted, but Spinelli's software confirmed the match. It was Sidwell. He had confronted her about changing the plan. Natalia had second thoughts. Perhaps guilt, perhaps fear, or perhaps she realized Sonny wasn't the man they had painted him to be. But by then, it was too late. The last clear frame showed Sidwell grabbing her arm. The next shot went black. Minutes later, Natalia would be found dead. Maxie was horrified. Not only had Sonny been set up, but Natalia, flawed and manipulative as she had been, was ultimately a pawn in Sidwell's larger game. The real architect of this nightmare was still very much alive, hiding in plain sight. Still orchestrating chaos through the courtrooms, the media, and behind closed doors. Maxie knew she had to act. She compiled the evidence, emails, footage, financial trails, and prepared to present them to Laura. It wouldn't be easy. Sidwell had allies, he had power, and he had already begun undermining Sonny's reputation through the legal system. But Maxie also knew that the truth was a weapon more potent than any campaign Sidwell could run. If she timed it right, if she played this carefully, she could not only exonerate Sonny but bring down Sidwell once and for all. But this revelation came with a cost. Maxie understood that Sidwell would not go down quietly. Exposing him meant putting herself in danger, possibly alienating others who had been duped by his lies. Yet the urgency outweighed the fear. Sonny deserved justice. Port Charles deserved the truth. And Natalia, for all her faults, deserved more than to be remembered as just another cautionary tale. As Maxie prepared for the next phase, she realized that this wasn't just about saving Sonny's name, it was about reclaiming control over the future of the city. Sidwell's influence had stretched too far, poisoned too many lives. And if left unchecked, he would keep pulling strings until there was nothing left to protect. With this evidence in hand, Maxie was ready to turn the tide. The question now was, could she reveal the truth before Sidwell made his next move? Because in a city where power often lies in perception, one wrong step could turn a hero into a scapegoat, and a villain into a savior. If the shocking rumor that Natalia is still alive proves to be true, it could unravel everything Port Charles thought it knew about the current crisis, and plunge Sonny into even deeper chaos than before. In a town already on edge, where every whisper can ignite a scandal and every secret carries lethal consequences, the idea that Natalia may have faked her own death is not just a twist, it's a seismic shift that exposes an entirely new layer of deception, danger, and betrayal. What had appeared to be a tragic overdose now begins to look like an elaborate vanishing act, meticulously planned and executed to trap Sonny in a web of criminal liability, personal disgrace, and irreversible loss of power. The implications of such a possibility are staggering. Natalia, once thought to be a victim, would instead be revealed as the mastermind behind one of the most elaborate cons Port Charles has ever witnessed. Her alliance with Sidwell may have gone far deeper than anyone realized. And her disappearance may have been the final phase of a plot meant to crush Sonny from the inside out. The alleged flash drive, the evidence she claimed to have kept from the DA, the offshore accounts, the staged betrayal, all of it may have been part of a meticulously calculated exit strategy, designed to shift the city's fury directly onto Sonny while she disappeared into the shadows with a fortune and a clean slate. Maxie, who had nearly destroyed herself emotionally while investigating Natalia's financial dealings, would now be forced to reevaluate everything. If Natalia is alive, then even the evidence Maxie gathered must be recontextualized. Every transaction, every data point, every suspicious transfer may not have been evidence of a murder, but rather the trail of a woman executing the ultimate escape. What would that mean for Sonny, who has already suffered a public smear campaign, a courtroom war, and the threat of losing custody battles and business alliances? For Sonny, this revelation wouldn't just be a betrayal. It would be a deeply personal act of psychological warfare. Natalia's supposed death sent shockwaves through every corner of his life, casting suspicion on his character and severing ties with some of his oldest allies. Now, to realize he had grieved a ghost, defended his innocence against a lie, and nearly sacrificed his own legacy for a woman who was never truly gone, it would shatter him in ways no bullet ever could. And yet, the fallout wouldn't stop with Sonny. Laura, the mayor of Port Charles, would be thrown into a constitutional crisis as this revelation undermines the entire legal process that followed Natalia's death. The judges, lawyers, law enforcement officials who had moved aggressively against Sonny would now have to answer for why they believed a death that never happened. Trust in civic institutions would be eroded. Public outrage would erupt. Every case Sidwell touched, every judgment against Sonny, every shred of political credibility, now suspect. But perhaps the darkest shadow falls on Sidwell himself. If Natalia is alive, then it's unclear whether Sidwell was duped along with the rest of the city, or if he was her co-conspirator, orchestrating the deception from the start. Either scenario is terrifying. If Sidwell knew all along, then he has become something far more dangerous than a corrupt power broker. He's a master of illusions capable of manipulating death itself to destroy his enemies. And if he didn't know, then he's a man with unlimited resources who's just been outmaneuvered by a partner he underestimated, and who may now seek revenge of his own. In this spiral of chaos, even allies begin to look like threats. Michael's quiet retreat, Willow's shaken faith, Jason's strategic silence, none of it feels stable anymore. If Natalia reemerges, Sonny will have to rethink everything, his strategy, his circle, his next move. Because in a game where the dead walk among the living, and the truth bends to the will of ambition, survival isn't about who's the strongest, it's about who sees the betrayal before it detonates. Natalia's return wouldn't just be a twist in a saga. It would be a declaration that the game has only just begun. And for Sonny, already haunted by enemies and ghosts alike, it might be the most dangerous chapter of his story yet. The evolving saga in Port Charles has taken a shocking turn as Maxie steps into a role no one anticipated, becoming Sonny's unexpected savior at a time when nearly everyone else has either turned away from him or watched from the shadows in silence. What began as a whisper of suspicion, murmurs about Natalia's questionable handling of Sonny's second investment into Deception Cosmetics, has now become a full-blown revelation threatening to unravel the entire social and political structure of the town. Maxie, fueled not only by intuition but by a growing pile of evidence, is emerging as the central force in a conflict that has escalated into a storm of betrayal, power grabs, and calculated vengeance. Her actions have triggered what can only be described as a full-scale readjustment in Port Charles, a seismic correction that is shaking every institution, corporate, legal, and political, to its core. Natalia's mysterious death had sent shockwaves through the Corinthos family and painted Sonny as a man whose empire had finally crumbled beyond repair. With headlines quietly implicating him in financial wrongdoing, and whispers connecting him to Natalia's supposed demise, Sonny had become the perfect scapegoat, isolated, emotionally unmoored, and legally cornered. What no one expected, however, was that Maxie, once considered a supporting character in the broader drama, would become the linchpin in exposing a conspiracy far more twisted than anyone imagined. Her discovery of encrypted financial records, silent bank transfers overseas, and Natalia's hidden communications with Sidwell revealed a sinister plot designed not just to destroy Sonny, but to shift power in Port Charles once and for all. The clues Maxie found weren't random, they were carefully placed, carefully hidden, and even more dangerously timed. Natalia's request for Sonny's trust wasn't about cosmetics or legacy. It was a strategic trap. By coaxing Sonny into a second investment in Deception Cosmetics, she opened the door for Sidwell to quietly manipulate the financials and later implicate Sonny in fabricated money laundering operations. Maxie, with her deep understanding of Deception's operational systems and her unmatched eye for inconsistencies, quickly saw through the smoke and mirrors. What followed was an act of bravery few others in her position would dare take. She aligned herself with Spinelli, accessed off-the-record data trails, and began reconstructing the timeline of events that painted Natalia not as a victim, but as a calculated architect of deception. And yet, the story took an even darker twist when Maxie discovered whispers, buried in back channels and message logs, that Natalia might still be alive. The idea was unthinkable, but the evidence was there. Anomalies in the autopsy reports, a death certificate filed by an unverified third party, and security footage from a small airport just outside of Albany showing a woman matching Natalia's profile boarding a private plane under an alias. If Natalia faked her death, then Sonny isn't just the victim of defamation, he's the prey in a much larger game. And Sidwell? He isn't merely a corrupt political force, he might be the executioner, working in tandem with Natalia to dismantle the power structures in Port Charles for good. This realization has placed Maxie in unimaginable danger. She is now the sole bearer of knowledge that could not only clear Sonny's name but also implicate some of the town's most powerful individuals in a conspiracy rooted in greed and political ambition. She knows too much. She's seen too much. And the further she goes, the closer she steps to becoming a target herself. But despite the looming threat, Maxie's resolve has only hardened. She understands what's at stake. She's no longer acting out of loyalty alone. This is about justice, redemption, and restoring balance to a city slowly devouring itself from within. The emotional toll is undeniable. Maxie's decision to protect Sonny hasn't come without cost. She's alienated colleagues. She's hidden truths from Brooklyn. She's kept her findings secret from Jason and Carly, knowing that their reactions, however well-meaning, might compromise her progress. But she also knows she doesn't have the luxury of time. If Natalia is still alive, then it's only a matter of time before she strikes again. And if Sidwell discovers what Maxie knows, he will stop at nothing to silence her. Sonny, meanwhile, has begun to see glimmers of the truth. Though still shrouded in paranoia and battling the public collapse of his empire, he senses that Maxie is working behind the scenes, unearthing pieces of the puzzle that he never had access to. Her loyalty, once underestimated, is now his most valuable shield. And while the rest of the town waits for Sonny to fall, or worse, to retaliate, Maxie is carefully building a case that will not only expose the liars but reclaim Sonny's dignity, his family's safety, and perhaps even his soul. But the stakes are rising. Spinelli's cyber trail is beginning to attract attention. Maxie's encrypted data logs are being probed. An anonymous source sent her a message warning, "Back off, or you'll end up like her." Whether that's a reference to Natalia, or someone else yet to be revealed, is unclear. What is clear, however, is that Port Charles has reached a boiling point. This is no longer about deception or business investments. It's about trust, betrayal, and the willingness to burn everything to the ground just to control what rises from the ashes. Maxie, once dismissed as just a PR girl, is now the vanguard of resistance against the darkest conspiracy the city has seen in years. Her alliance with Sonny has redefined the battlefield, and the next move will determine the fate of not only Sonny's empire but of the moral center of Port Charles itself. Because in this town, where every truth has a price and every alliance hides a dagger, Maxie's quest for justice might be the only thing left between survival and total collapse. And if Natalia is still out there, alive, calculating, and ready to finish what she started, then Port Charles hasn't seen its darkest hour yet. But one thing is certain, Maxie will not let Sonny fall without a fight. And the ripple effect of her war for the truth will change everything. Forever.